The late afternoon sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the rural road leading away from Kingsborough. Nia Ellis adjusted the weight of her heavy backpack, feeling the worn straps dig into her shoulders. Her small hands gripped the handle, the faint scent of grease and oil lingering from the small mechanic shop she had just left. She didn't mind the smell. It was part of who she was, now part of the life her Uncle Leon had shown her since she was a child. The road was quiet, the kind of quiet that only existed in small towns far from the noise and lights of the city. Fields stretched out on either side, the golden crops swaying gently in the breeze. A few cars passed by now and then, but nothing that caught her attention until she saw it. Parked on the shoulder of the road was a sleek red Shelby GT 500 Mustang. Its polished surface glinted in the sunlight, but the raised hood betrayed a mechanical failure. A white man in an expensive suit paced next to it, a phone pressed to his ear, his voice sharp and frantic. The suit was the kind you saw in movies, the kind that cost more than her entire house. Nia hesitated, looking down at her worn-out sneakers, then back up at the Mustang. Her Aunt Renee always told her not to talk to strangers, especially those who clearly didn't belong in the rural area where she lived. But something about the man's frustration, his helplessness, made her stop. Her Uncle Leon had always said that everyone should know the basics of car repairs. A mechanic's daughter, you gotta know how to fix things, he used to tell her. And so Nia had learned, absorbing every lesson about engines, tools, and the quiet precision required to put things back together. She shifted her backpack slightly, the weight of her toolkit pressing against her back. She glanced down at the dusty road, then back at the man. He hadn't noticed her yet. Nia took a deep breath and walked toward him, her sneakers crunching softly on the gravel. "Excuse me, sir," she called, her voice steady despite the curiosity swirling inside her. She wasn't used to approaching strangers, but something told her this was different. The man whipped around, startled at first. His irritation melted into a condescending smile as he looked her over. A small girl, probably no older than 10, wearing faded shorts and an oversized MIT t-shirt, a set of colorful braids cascading down her back. He raised an eyebrow, his expression almost dismissive. "That's very kind of you, sweetheart," he said, his voice cool and patronizing. "But this is a high-performance vehicle. I need a real mechanic, not a, I can take a look." Nia interrupted, her voice firm despite the sinking feeling in her stomach. She had been underestimated before, but she wasn't backing down now. The man's expression flickered between amusement and disbelief. He looked at her, then at the car, then back at her. His hesitation lasted only a moment before he sighed clearly, running out of options. "Fine," he said with a shrug. "You can try, but I doubt you'll do much." Nia ignored his sarcasm and crouched beside the car, her eyes scanning the engine with practiced precision. The man, now silent, hovered nearby, watching as she effortlessly slipped into the role of a mechanic. The heat of the afternoon seemed to press against her as she peered under the hood, fingers lightly brushing over the various parts. She could feel the engine's tension, the pulsing rhythm of a machine that wasn't quite right. A small puddle of coolant had formed beneath the car, something the man had clearly missed. "Your engine's overheating, Nia," said her voice calm and matter-of-fact. "It's leaking coolant, that's why it stalled." The man blinked in surprise, stepping closer to get a better look. His eyes widened as he noticed the coolant puddle beneath the car, a detail he had clearly missed in his flurry of frustration. "How did you know?" he asked, his voice suddenly tinged with genuine curiosity. Nia shrugged nonchalantly, though. Inside, she was already calculating the next steps in her head. She had learned to trust her instincts when it came to cars. They never lied. "My uncle's a mechanic. She said he's been teaching me about engines since I was little. I can at least patch it up temporarily." She opened her backpack and pulled out a small, well-used emergency kit, the one her uncle insisted she carry at all times. It was a little battered just like her, but it had everything she needed for situations like this. She set to work with quick, practiced hands, using the tools to seal the leak in the radiator hose. As she worked, she felt a growing sense of calm. There was something peaceful about fixing things, about making them work again the way they were meant to. The man, still watching, seemed to soften as he observed her competence. "My name's Nia," she said, glancing up at him as she finished. "Nia Ellis." He hesitated before reaching out his hand. "Carter Hudson," he said, his voice less dismissive now, though still carrying an air of formality. Nia shook his hand, noting how cold and firm his grip was. She could tell he wasn't used to dealing with people like her. "I think I've got it fixed temporarily," she said. But you'll need to add coolant before you drive far. As she stood up and wiped her hands on her oversized t-shirt, something caught Carter's eye. It was a glint of green, a ring on Nia's finger. The emerald stone sparkled under the sun, catching his attention in a way that made his breath catch in his throat. He stared at the ring for a moment longer than was polite, his mind racing as memories flooded back. That ring, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Where did you get it? Nia glanced down at her hand, surprised by the question. It's my mother's, she said quietly. My adoptive mother, Diana. She passed away last year. She said it was a symbol of an important promise, but she never told me much more than that. Carter's expression changed in an instant, his face growing pale. His heart skipped a beat as he realized what the ring represented. The very thing he had been searching for, the very connection he had been looking for so many years. A promise made to a little girl at Horizon Haven Orphanage years ago. The past long buried had come crashing into the present with a single glance at a simple piece of jewelry. Carter Hudson sat in his high-rise office at Hudson Enterprises, staring at the screen in front of him. His mind wasn't on the quarterly reports or the latest real estate developments that he was supposed to be reviewing. No, his thoughts were with a little girl, a girl who at first glance seemed unremarkable, a mechanic's daughter who had fixed his car on the side of a rural road. But there was something about her, something in her eyes and the way she moved and spoke that had set off a string of memories he thought he had buried long ago. He had spent the entire night replaying their brief interaction over and over in his head. The sound of her voice steady and sure as she explained the problem with his Mustang. The calm confidence in her movements as she inspected the engine. But most of all, it was the ring. The emerald ring. He couldn't shake the image of it, the way the sunlight caught its facets. The crescent-shaped imperfection that had been burned into his memory from 12 years ago. It was the same ring he had given to a little girl at an orphanage called Horizon Haven. The same girl. He had spent years trying to forget that place, but the appearance of the ring so unexpectedly on the hand of a girl who looked so much like the one he had promised to return for had brought it all flooding back. The orphanage had closed suddenly and the files had gone missing. The children, those rare few with special talents, had been scattered, their fates uncertain. He had moved on, bearing the past beneath layers of business deals and family obligations. But now it seemed the past had returned with a vengeance. Carter reached for his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. The line clicked and a voice he hadn't heard in more than a decade answered. "Hello, Carter," came the gravelly voice of his old investigator, Ramirez. "What's this about?" "I need you to look into someone for me," Carter said, his voice low. "A girl named Nia Ellis. She's about 10 years old, from Kingsborough. I think she's linked to Horizon Haven." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Ramirez spoke again. "You're serious after all this time?" "Yeah," Carter replied, his voice tight. "I'm serious. Find out everything you can about her, where she came from, her family, everything. I need to know who she is and why she has that ring." Ramirez's voice softened, an edge of sympathy creeping in. "You're chasing ghosts, Carter. But I'll get on it. I'll let you know what I find." "Thanks, Ramirez," Carter said, hanging up the phone. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the city skyline, his mind racing. The thought of what Nia might be connected to terrified him. The old guilt from his involvement with Horizon Haven resurfaced, gnawing at him. He knew what his family had been involved in, what they had done, but he never thought he would have to face it again. Not like this. Shibuya. The next few days passed in a blur of restless nights and anxious thoughts. Carter tried to focus on his work, but his attention kept drifting back to Nia. He thought about her quiet confidence, the way she worked without hesitation, like she belonged in the world of machines. She had fixed his car, and in doing so, she had unknowingly unlocked a door to his past he wasn't sure he was ready to open again. Nia, on the other hand, had returned to her quiet life in Kingsborough. She had no idea that her simple act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would unravel everything she thought she knew about herself. She spent the next day in her workshop, the small garage her uncle had set up behind their house, tinkering with a broken radio. It was her refuge, the place where she could lose herself in the rhythm of turning screws and fixing wires. But even there, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Something inside her had clicked into place after meeting Carter, and it was like the universe was pushing her towards something bigger, something she didn't fully understand yet. Did you manage to fix that old radio, Nia? Uncle Leon's voice broke through her thoughts as he walked into the garage, his oil-stained hands wiping on a rag. Nia smiled, holding up the radio, the soft hum of its working parts filling the space. Yeah, just had to reconnect a few wires, she said, pride in her voice. Leon ruffled her hair affectionately. You've got a gift, girl. I've never seen anyone get machines like you do. Nia's fingers instinctively twirled the emerald ring on her finger as she looked down at the radio. The thought of Carter and his strange reaction to her ring lingered in her mind. It wasn't the first time someone had noticed it, but it was the first time someone had seemed so shaken. Uncle, she said hesitantly, do you think my mom would be proud of me? Leon's expression softened. He sat down next to her, his tired eyes meeting hers. Diana was proud of you every day, Nia. She always believed in you. She used to say you had a gift, not just with machines, but with people. She'd be proud of you for sure. Nia's gaze dropped to the ring again, her fingers tracing the smooth surface of the stone. I met a man the other day. His car broke down and I helped him fix it. He seemed strange when he saw my ring. Leon froze. His face, usually so calm and steady, suddenly tightened. He exchanged a look with Renee, who had appeared in the doorway. A heavy silence filled the room. Nia, Leon said, his voice tense, what man his name was. Carter Hudson, Nia said. He gave me his card. At the mention of the name, both Leon and Renee stiffened. Nia could see the sudden tension between them, and it made her uneasy. Carter Hudson, Leon repeated slowly, his voice barely a whisper. He stood up abruptly, pacing back and forth. Did he say anything else? Anything about the ring? Nia shook her head. No, just that it was familiar to him. But why are you both acting so strange? What's going on? Renee stepped forward, her face serious. Nia, sweetheart, it's time you learn the truth about your mother, about why she disappeared and what really happened at Horizon Haven. The evening was growing darker and a chill had begun to creep into the air. Nia sat at the worn kitchen table, her fingers absently tracing the edge of her mother's letter. Her adoptive mother, Diana, had always been a woman of few words, but the things she had said had carried weight. The quiet lessons the wisdom passed through gentle gestures, and the hidden truths she had left behind, all suddenly seemed to pull Nia into a deeper understanding of who she was and what she might be destined to become. Leon sat across from her, the lines on his face deepening as he watched her twist the ring on her finger. His own emotions clouded. Renee had stepped outside for a moment, and the silence in the room was suffocating. The weight of the unspoken hung heavily between them. Nia, Leon said, his voice gruff but gentle. There's a lot we haven't told you. Things about your mom, things about why we had to leave Horizon Haven. Nia's heart skipped a beat. She had been expecting this, but nothing could have prepared her for the rush of emotions that flooded her chest. She looked at Leon, searching for some sign of reassurance, but he only shook his head as if to say he couldn't protect her from the truth anymore. I don't understand, Nia whispered, her voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you hide all of this from me? Leon sighed heavily, rubbing his face, as if trying to wipe away the years of regret that had accumulated. We did what we thought was best for you, kid. When Diana brought you to us, she was terrified. She had seen things that no one should have to see. Horizon Haven wasn't what it seemed, and she made us promise to keep you safe no matter what. Nia's grip tightened around the letter, the paper creaking under her fingers. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, but they didn't make any sense. What was Horizon Haven? What was so bad about it? Leon's face darkened, and he looked away as if the memories were too painful to relive. It wasn't just an orphanage, Nia. It was a place where children with special abilities were kept. Your mother, he paused, looking for the right words, but they never came. Instead, he stood up abruptly, walking toward the small window that looked out into the darkening yard. The light from the kitchen illuminated his hunched figure, casting long shadows across the room. Your mom worked there as a nurse. Leon continued, his voice quieter now. She was part of the staff that helped with the kids, but there were people in charge who used those kids, exploited their gifts. People who had no business being in charge of children. We never knew exactly what happened, but your mother, she couldn't stand it. She couldn't let them keep you there. Nia's pulse quickened. But why did she leave? Why did she disappear? Leon turned slowly to face her, his expression pained. We had to leave. Your mother took you out of there when you were just a baby. She ran, changed your name, and tried to disappear. She knew they were looking for you, Nia. They wanted to use you. They wanted to control you. Nia's breath caught in her throat. She felt the walls of the room close in around her as she tried to process what Leon was saying. Her mind raced with the implications of his words. Who were they? Who were the people that wanted me? Nia's voice was shaking a mix of confusion, fear, and anger. Leon sat back down at the table, looking her in the eyes. Carter Hudson's family, he said the name like a punch to Nia's chest. They were behind it. Horizon Haven was part of their operations. A front for something much bigger. Your mother, Diana, wasn't just trying to protect you from them. She was trying to protect you from what they planned to do to you. Nia stared at him, her mind struggling to process the enormity of his words. Carter Hudson. The man I helped fix his car, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Leon nodded grimly. His family's business wasn't just about real estate, Nia. It was much darker. They were interested in children like you, children with special abilities. Your mother knew that, and when she realized that you had powers of your own, she took you and ran. But why didn't she tell me this? Nia's voice cracked with emotion. Why didn't she tell me about the danger? Leon looked at her with sorrowful eyes. She wanted to, Nia, but there were things she couldn't explain, things that would have made you a target. She couldn't put that on you, but she wanted you to be safe. She wanted you to live your life without fear, and she thought that by keeping you away from it all, you could have a normal life. Nia felt a surge of emotion, the grief of losing her mother all over again, the weight of secrets she had never known, and the unsettling realization that her life had always been tied to forces beyond her control. The sound of footsteps echoed outside, and Renee entered the room, her face drawn with worry. She had been listening at the door, Nia realized, but now she stepped forward with a heavy sigh. I know this is a lot, sweetie, Renee said softly, but you need to understand something. Your mother died trying to protect you. She never wanted you to know what she had to do or the people she had to run from. But now it's time for you to know the truth. The past is coming for you, Nia. Nia looked at her aunt, the woman who had taken her in after Diana's death, who had raised her with love and care. But even Renee's face now held a kind of quiet resignation. The past was never as far away as they had hoped. The days following Leon's revelations were a blur for Nia. Her mind was racing with 100 unanswered questions, each one leading her deeper into a labyrinth of secrets she had never imagined. Every conversation with her uncle and aunt, every fragment of her past now seemed to carry a heavy weight, pulling her towards something she couldn't yet understand. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of red and orange, Nia sat in the workshop, surrounded by tools and forgotten projects. Her fingers absently traced the edge of the emerald ring, the stone now feeling heavier on her finger, as though it carried the burden of all the secrets it held. Her thoughts kept returning to Carter Hudson. His face, his voice, the shock in his eyes when he saw the ring, all of it gnawed at her. Why had he reacted that way? And why had he been looking for her in the first place? There had to be more to the story, something deeper than just a broken car on the side of the road. She needed answers, but there was no way she was going to get them from her family alone. They had protected her, yes, but at the cost of keeping her in the dark. Nia couldn't move forward with half the truth. She needed to find Carter, to confront him, to ask him what he knew. The man who had once been so dismissive of her was now the key to unlocking the rest of her past. The next morning, Nia made her decision. She was going to find him. With the emerald ring securely on her finger and her backpack slung over her shoulder, she made her way to Kingsborough, the bustling heart of the town where Carter's office was located. She had no plan, no concrete idea of how to approach him, but something deep inside told her she needed to face him, and she needed to do it now. As she walked through the streets of the town, Nia couldn't help but notice how different everything felt now. The people, the buildings, even the very air around her, it all seemed to hold a different meaning, as if she were seeing the world through a new set of eyes. She reached the glass and steel office building that housed Hudson Enterprises. It was a towering structure out of place in a town like Kingsborough. Inside, the floor was polished to a shine, the air thick with the scent of expensive coffee and pristine office furniture. Nia walked up to the receptionist, her heart pounding in her chest. I need to speak with Mr. Carter Hudson, she said, her voice steady, despite the nerves that clenched in her stomach. The receptionist raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the sudden visit. Do you have an appointment, she asked. No, Nia replied. But it's important. Tell him Nia Ellis is here. I'm the one who fixed his car. The receptionist hesitated for a moment, then picked up the phone. Nia waited, her mind racing. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew she had to do this. She had to face whatever it was that was pulling her into this strange, hidden world. A moment later, the receptionist hung up the phone. Mr. Hudson will see you now, she said, gesturing toward the elevator. Nia stepped into the elevator, her stomach in knots. She had no idea what was waiting for her, but she wasn't turning back now. The elevator doors opened to a sleek, modern office on the top floor. Carter was standing by the window, his back to her, as he looked out over the city. He turned when he heard the door open, his eyes narrowing as they locked onto her. Nia Ellis, he said, his voice flat, but there was an edge to it. What are you doing here? Nia took a deep breath, her grip on her backpack tightening. I need answers, she said, her voice steady but firm. You know something. You know more than you're letting on. About my mother. About Horizon Haven. Carter's face remained unreadable, but Nia could see the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders tensed. He took a step toward her, his expression shifting to one of guarded curiosity. I don't know what you think you're doing, Nia, he said, his tone low. But you're treading in dangerous waters. Your mother, Diana, she wasn't just a nurse at Horizon Haven. She was part of something bigger. And you, he stopped himself, his eyes flicking to her hand. You have no idea what you're getting into. Nia's heart raced, but she didn't back down. Then tell me everything. Carter ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling with something. You don't understand. I was just a kid when I was involved in all of this. My family, they had a business, a project, something that went way beyond real estate. Horizon Haven was just a cover. They were experimenting on children. Children with special abilities. Nia's breath caught in her throat. She had suspected something darker, but hearing him confirm, it was another blow entirely. What kind of abilities? Why me? Carter's gaze softened, and for the first time Nia saw the weight of the guilt in his eyes. Your mother didn't want you to be part of it. That's why she ran. She knew what they were doing to children with abilities like yours. She knew that they were trying to control you, and she wasn't going to let that happen. Abilities like mine, Nia echoed, her mind reeling. She had always known there was something different about her, something special, but now it seemed like everything she had ever known was a lie. What do you mean? What abilities? Carter walked toward the desk, pulling out a file from one of the drawers. He opened it, revealing documents and photos of children, all marked with various tags. Nia's eyes scanned the pages, her heart pounding faster. These children, Carter continued, they were tested for cognitive abilities for enhanced senses. Your mother was part of a team that tried to protect them, but not all of them were saved. Nia felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Her mother had been protecting children like her, and now it all made sense, the fear, the secrecy, the constant moving from place to place. I don't know what you've been told, Carter said, his voice growing softer. But Nia, your mother, she didn't just want to keep you safe from them. She wanted you to have a chance at a normal life. She tried to hide you from it all. Then why didn't she tell me? Nia asked, her voice trembling. Carter closed the file and looked at her, his face filled with sorrow. Because she didn't want you to have to carry the weight of it. But now you need to know the truth. Nia left Carter's office in a haze, her mind whirling with the shocking truths he had revealed. The pieces of her past, once scattered and disjointed, had suddenly begun to come together. But as the puzzle formed, it only made her more uneasy. The life she had known, the world she had lived in, was not what it seemed. And worse yet, the deeper she looked, the more danger she uncovered. The wind whipped through the streets of Kingsborough as she made her way back to her uncle's house. She barely noticed the familiar buildings and faces she passed by. Everything felt different now. It was as if she had crossed an invisible line, and there was no going back. She couldn't stop thinking about the files Carter had shown her, the photographs of children, the names, the notes scrawled in the margins. They had all been part of something bigger, something that had preyed on their abilities. And what terrified her most was the thought that she might be next, that her very existence was now a threat to powerful people she didn't even know. When she arrived home, she found Uncle Leon waiting in the kitchen, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the house. He looked up when she entered, his face drawn with concern. "How'd it go?" Leon asked, his voice careful, as if he knew what was coming. Nia dropped her bag onto the chair and sank into the seat across from him. She didn't have to say anything for Leon to know that something had changed. The tension in the room thickened as she struggled to find the right words. "I talked to him," she said, her voice quiet. "Carter Hudson. He told me everything." Leon's face remained impassive, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of worry. "I figured it would come to this. I knew you'd find out one way or another." Nia's eyes locked onto his. "Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me about all of this?" Leon sighed deeply, rubbing his forehead. "We wanted to protect you, Nia. From all of it. From them. From the things your mother did to keep you safe. But now I know. I know what she was trying to protect me from." Nia's fingers twitched, the emerald ring on her hand feeling heavier than ever. "I know what I'm connected to. And I know that there are people, dangerous people, who will stop at nothing to get to me." Leon nodded, his face grim. "I never wanted you to have to face this kid. But now that you know the truth, there's no going back. They'll come for you, Nia. I'm not sure when, but they will." Nia felt a knot form in her stomach. The reality of her situation was settling in. She wasn't just a mechanic's daughter. She wasn't just some ordinary girl living in a small town. She was a part of something much bigger, something dangerous. Suddenly, the quiet of the house was shattered by the sound of tires screeching to a halt outside. Nia's heart skipped a beat as she stood up, rushing to the window. She saw a black SUV parked in front of their house, its tinted windows reflecting the fading light of the evening. "Uncle Leon," Nia whispered, her voice trembling. "Who are they?" Leon's face went pale. "Stay here," he said quickly, moving toward the door. "Don't open it for anyone." Before Nia could ask another question, Leon was gone, stepping out into the yard. She watched through the window as he approached the SUV, his body tense, his movements calculated. But Nia could see the way his hands shook as he reached for the door handle. Whoever was in that car wasn't just an ordinary visitor. The door slammed open with a force that made Nia jump, and she quickly stepped back, instinctively, reaching for the small toolkit her uncle had given her. The footsteps that followed echoed through the house, deliberate and heavy. Nia's pulse quickened. The figure in the doorway wasn't Leon. It was a tall man in a dark suit, his face stern and unreadable. His cold eyes locked onto Nia the moment he entered. "I'm here to see Nia Ellis," the man said, his voice low, almost menacing. "Tell her to come with me." Nia's breath caught in her throat. She had never seen this man before, but there was something in the way he spoke, something that told her he was not here on a friendly visit. Her heart raced and every instinct in her body told her to run, but she didn't. She stood frozen, gripping her uncle's old toolkit tightly. The man stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, though the sincerity in his words was lacking. "But you don't have a choice in this. Come with me." Nia could feel the tension thickening, every moment dragging out longer than the last. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm someone who knows exactly what you are," the man replied. "And I'm here to bring you back, to make sure you don't cause any more problems." Just then Nia heard a faint sound behind her. The voice of her Uncle Leon rose up from the yard. "You're not taking her anywhere." The man turned sharply, his face now visibly tense. "Stay out of this," he growled, but Leon's voice grew stronger. "I'm not going to let you do this, not to her. Not after everything we've done to keep her safe." The man's eyes shifted back to Nia, his gaze hardening. He knew the game was up, and it was clear now Nia wasn't just some ordinary girl. She was a target, one that would no longer be left untouched. "You don't have to make this harder than it needs to be," he said, his tone darkening. But Nia wasn't afraid anymore. Not after everything she had learned, not after everything her mother had done to protect her. She wasn't going to let fear control her. Not anymore. Before the man could take another step, Nia made her decision. "I'm not going with you," she said firmly, her voice filled with a newfound resolve. The man's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "You'll regret that decision." Nia's heart raced as the man in the dark suit stood motionless in the doorway, his cold eyes locked onto her. The silence between them was suffocating thick with the unspoken promise of danger. She could feel the weight of her uncle's gaze from the yard, but she didn't look away from the man. She couldn't. This wasn't just some random threat. This was the beginning of something bigger. Leon's voice boomed from outside, but the man didn't move his eyes, never leaving Nia. "You don't have a choice," the man said, his voice low and steely. "You're coming with me. Now." Nia's hand tightened around the edge of the workbench in front of her, the cool metal of the toolkit digging into her palm. She could feel the pulse of adrenaline in her veins, but she didn't back down. The events of the past few days, the truth about her mother, the secrets she'd been kept in the dark about, had ignited something within her. A fire that burned through the fear, urging her to act. "No," Nia said firmly, her voice steady, though her heart pounded in her chest. "I'm not going anywhere with you." The man's expression hardened. "You think you can stop this? You think you can hide forever?" He took a step closer, his movements deliberate like a predator closing in on its prey. Before Nia could react, the sound of tires screeching on gravel reached her ears. A familiar voice rang out from the yard. "You're not taking her anywhere." It was Leon. Nia turned to see her uncle running toward the door, his face a mask of determination, his fists clenched at his sides. "Nia, get behind me," Leon commanded. The man in the suit shot Leon a withering look, his jaw tightening. "This doesn't have to get ugly." "Oh, but it already has," Leon spat, his voice thick with anger. He took a step forward, positioning himself between Nia and the man, his body an impenetrable wall. "Get out of my house. You don't belong here." Nia's breath caught in her throat as she glanced at her uncle. She had never seen him like this, so fierce, so protective. He had always been the calm one, the one who kept things together, but now he was ready to fight, to protect her. The man, however, wasn't intimidated. He stepped forward again, his eyes flicking between Leon and Nia. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. This isn't just about you. This is bigger than both of you." "What is it?" Nia asked, her voice full of defiance. "What do you want from me? Why are you here?" The man's lips curled into a thin smile. "You're special, Nia. You don't even know what you are, do you?" He took another step forward, his voice low and ominous. "You've inherited more than just your mother's ring. You've inherited her legacy." Nia's heart skipped a beat. What legacy? The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he paused as if weighing his next words carefully. Horizon Haven wasn't just an orphanage. It was part of something much bigger. Something your mother was involved in, something your family has been trying to hide for years. Your mother's job wasn't just to care for you. She was working on something dangerous. Leon stepped forward, his body still blocking Nia from the man. "Enough," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "I won't let you use her like you did her mother." Nia's head spun with everything she had just heard. Something dangerous. Her mother's job hadn't just been to protect her. She had been involved in something that could change the course of everything Nia thought she knew. But the man wasn't finished. "You don't know the full picture, kid," he continued. Horizon Haven wasn't just about orphaned children with special abilities. It was about exploiting those abilities, using them for something far darker than you can imagine. Your mother knew this. She tried to keep you out of it, to protect you from what they wanted to do to you. But you're already part of it. You always have been. Nia's mind raced. She had never felt more confused in her life. But there was one thing she knew for sure: her mother's death, the secrecy, the disappearance from Horizon Haven. It all made sense now. Her mother had run. She had fled. And now Nia was facing the consequences of that flight. "You think you can just take me away?" Nia demanded, her voice shaking but filled with conviction. "What is this, some kind of twisted experiment?" The man's smile faded, replaced with an almost pitying look. "You're not just any child, Nia. Your abilities are more powerful than you realize. The things they could do with someone like you. It's unimaginable. But your mother kept you hidden. She made sure they couldn't get to you. And now it's too late." Leon, his face pale but unwavering, moved even closer to Nia. "I won't let you take her. Whatever this is, it ends now." The man's eyes narrowed. He seemed to weigh his options, considering whether to force the issue or retreat. He glanced at Leon and then at Nia, his gaze lingering on the ring. Nia could see the calculation in his eyes. He was trying to decide if it was worth escalating the situation. "You can't hide from this forever," he said finally, his voice cold. You're already involved. Your mother's legacy can't be erased. They'll come for you. And when they do, there won't be anywhere left to hide. With that, he turned and walked toward the door, pausing just before he left. But remember this, he said, his voice low. I'm not the only one looking for you. And with that, the door slammed behind him, leaving an eerie silence in his wake. Nia stood frozen, the weight of the man's words hanging in the air. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't speak. She couldn't. The tension in the room felt thick enough to suffocate her. Leon, his face still pale but resolute, turned to her. His eyes softened as he placed a hand on her shoulder. It's not over, Nia, but we'll fight this. We'll protect you. Nia's mind was a whirlwind of emotions, fear, confusion, anger, and a strange sense of purpose. She wasn't just a helpless child caught in a dangerous game. She had a choice now. A choice to fight back, to uncover the truth about her past, her mother's legacy, and the dark forces that sought to control her. As the night stretched on, Nia realized that she couldn't run from this anymore. The truth was out there, and it was time for her to take control of her own destiny. In Chapter 6, the long-awaited truths about Horizon Haven and Nia's involvement in the dangerous world of special abilities come to light. The man's confrontation forces Nia to face the gravity of her situation, and the conflict with her past becomes unavoidable. Now Nia must decide whether to fight against the forces that seek to control her or let them take over. Let me know if you'd like to adjust anything or proceed to Chapter 7. For the miniban Janoi develop, Chapter 7, ChatGPT Janoi. Let's move forward with Chapter 7, Redemption, where the consequences of the revelations from the previous chapters begin to take full effect. Nia must now make difficult decisions as she faces the truth about her past, her mother's legacy, and the powerful forces after her. The tension between Nia and Carter builds as their paths cross once again, but now they find themselves in an unexpected alliance, fighting not just for their survival, but for a chance at redemption. For Chapter 7, Redemption. The night seemed to stretch on endlessly as Nia sat in the quiet of the kitchen, the events of the day replaying in her mind. The man in the suit had left, but his words lingered in the air like a dark cloud. You're already involved. Your mother's legacy can't be erased. She had tried to push it all aside, tried to focus on something normal, her uncle's protective embrace, the comforting hum of the workshop. But the reality of it all pressed against her chest like a heavy weight. There was no escape. Her past wasn't just a shadow, it was a force that was coming for her, whether she was ready or not. Are you all right? Leon's voice cut through her thoughts as he stepped into the kitchen. His face was tight with worry, his posture stiff. It was clear that the conversation with the man hadn't been easy for either of them. Nia didn't answer right away. She couldn't. Words felt too small to convey what was building inside her. The truth about her mother, the dark legacy that had been passed down to her, and the looming threat of those who would use her, everything seemed too much. Too dangerous. I'm fine, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. She stood up, moving toward the small window that overlooked their quiet yard. It's just a lot to take in. Leon's footsteps were soft as he crossed the room, coming to stand beside her. He placed a hand on her shoulder, a comforting weight, but his gaze was troubled. You know I would do anything to protect you, right? Nia nodded, though she couldn't bring herself to speak. She wanted to believe that her uncle could shield her from everything, but deep down she knew it wasn't possible. The forces coming for her were too powerful, too far-reaching. Where do we go from here? She finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Leon sighed heavily, his gaze shifting to the floor. We fight. We find a way to protect you, and we expose the people who've been hiding in the shadows all these years. Your mother did it to protect you. Now it's your turn. A sense of purpose began to settle within Nia, though it was laced with fear. She wasn't ready for this, but there was no avoiding it now. The fight for her future had begun, and she had to decide who she wanted to be in this war, not just a pawn, but a force for change, for justice. So the next morning, Nia found herself standing at the edge of Kingsborough, looking out toward the distant horizon. The sun had just risen, casting the world in a soft golden light. Everything felt so normal here, so peaceful. But she knew that peace wasn't hers to keep. Her thoughts drifted back to Carter. He had been involved in this from the start, unknowingly. But now things had changed. There was no denying it. He was part of this legacy, part of the very thing that had threatened her family. But there was also a part of him that seemed different, a part that had once tried to protect her. Was there hope for redemption, even for someone like him? Or was he just another cog in the machine, unable to break free? Her heart was heavy with these questions as she walked back toward the house. She was about to enter a world she couldn't escape, but she had a choice. She could be a victim or she could take control. She had already seen what happened when people ran. It was time to stand her ground. However, that afternoon, Carter stood in front of his office looking out over the city that had once been his empire. The buildings loomed over him like giants, and for the first time they felt more like prison walls than towering symbols of power. He had spent years building his legacy, but it was all built on lies, manipulation, and corruption. His father's sins were his own sins now. And Nia, the girl he had met only days ago, was caught in the middle of it. He had tried to distance himself from the truth to bury the past and focus on the future, but now he couldn't escape it. The world he had built was crumbling, and he couldn't pretend he wasn't a part of the destruction. The phone on his desk buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. He glanced at the screen and saw that it was a message from his investigator. Ramirez had sent over more files, more dirt on his father's dealings, more details about Horizon Haven. But there was one name that stood out above the rest: Nia Ellis. Carter knew he had to confront her to figure out what she knew and whether she was willing to trust him. If she was, they could work together. Maybe they could bring down the forces that had been exploiting children like her. But it wouldn't be easy. The enemies they were facing were far more dangerous than Carter had ever imagined. Taking a deep breath, Carter picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. "Ramirez," he said, his voice steady. "I need you to find out everything you can about Nia Ellis. I don't care what it takes. I need to know what she's involved in." That evening, Nia sat at the kitchen table, a stack of old papers and documents in front of her. She had spent the entire afternoon going through everything she could find about Horizon Haven, her mother's involvement, and the twisted network of people behind it all. The pieces were coming together, but there were still so many unanswered questions. Her uncle Leon sat beside her, his face serious. "We've done all we can for now, but we need to be ready. They won't stop looking for you." "I know," Nia said, her voice firm, "but I'm not running anymore. I'll fight. I'll find a way to make sure they never hurt anyone again." Just as she said that, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke the silence. Nia stood up, her heart pounding in her chest. The car was unfamiliar. Leon's face went pale, and his hand instinctively reached for the door. "Stay here," he said, his voice low. "Let me handle this." But Nia didn't stay. She followed him out the door, her mind spinning with possibilities. Was it Carter? Had he come to warn her or to make a deal? The door opened, and there, standing in the yard, was Carter Hudson. His face was tense, his eyes locked onto Nia as if searching for answers. "I didn't come here to cause more trouble," Carter said, his voice weary. "I came because I know we have a chance to stop this together." Nia looked at him, her thoughts swirling. She didn't trust him completely, not yet. But she could see the pain in his eyes, the guilt he carried. And for the first time, she believed he was willing to do what it took to make things right. "Then what's the plan?" Nia asked, her voice steady with resolve. "We fight," Carter replied, his tone filled with quiet determination. "We take down the people who have been pulling the strings, and we make sure they never hurt anyone again." Nia looked at Leon, who nodded in approval, though his face remained tense. "We're in this together," Nia said, her voice strong, a fire igniting inside her. "Whatever happens next, I won't back down." Carter met her gaze, and for the first time she saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. The air felt heavier than it ever had before. The cool evening breeze that swept through Kingsborough now carried the scent of something more: ominous change. The kind of change that wasn't just about fixing a broken car or solving a mechanical problem. This was the kind of change that reshaped entire lives. Nia stood at the edge of the workshop, her back to the house, her eyes trained on the horizon as the sun began to dip beneath the trees. The warmth of the fading light bathed her face, but it did little to soften the storm of emotions swirling inside her. She had spent so many years trying to live a simple life, trying to ignore the past, to ignore the truth about her mother and Horizon Haven. But the storm had come for her, and now there was no turning back. "Are you ready?" Leon's voice came from behind her, but it didn't startle her. She was prepared. They had talked through everything, planned their next steps carefully. Carter, who had proven his loyalty, was standing at the gate watching her. The time had come to take action. "Ready as I'll ever be," Nia said quietly, turning to face her uncle. She could see the concern in his eyes, the tension that hadn't left his face since the day the man in the suit had come to their door. He was worried, and for good reason. The forces they were about to face were powerful, dangerous, but Nia had learned something about herself over the past few weeks. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not of them, and not of what lay ahead. Nia had made a choice. The girl who had once only known how to fix things was now about to tear down the very systems that had broken her family. She was no longer just protecting herself. She was fighting for the truth for those who had been used and discarded by people like Carter's family. And this time she wasn't going to let them win. "Come on," she said, a faint smile breaking through her serious expression. "Let's finish this." Sure you won't. The plan had been set in motion over the past few days. After Carter's revelations, he had gone to great lengths to gather evidence, more than enough to take down Hudson Enterprises and expose the twisted secrets that had been buried for years. They had allies now, people who had once worked at Horizon Haven, children who had been experimented on and discarded like tools. Carter had contacted an old friend in the media, a journalist named Marcus, who had been investigating his own family's connections to Horizon Haven for years. Together, they were building the case that would finally expose the truth to the world. The corruption, the exploitation, the manipulation, it all came to light in a way that would leave no room for denial. But as they approached the final stage of their plan, Nia knew there was one thing they still had to do: confront Carter's father. William Hudson, the patriarch of the Hudson family, had orchestrated the entire operation. He was the mastermind behind Horizon Haven, and he was the one who had knowingly profited from the suffering of children like Nia. His wealth, his power, his legacy, all of it had been built on the suffering of others. Nia had seen glimpses of what he was capable of, and now she would stand in front of him and demand justice. Morshirishon, where the meeting took place in the heart of Hudson Enterprises, the towering skyscraper that had once represented everything Carter had worked for. But now, standing in the lobby, Nia felt the weight of everything that had led them here. She could see it in Carter's eyes, too. This wasn't just business anymore. It was personal. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Carter asked, his voice quieter than usual. He had been beside her through every step of the journey, but she could tell that this was just as difficult for him. His father was a man who had shaped his life, his future, and now Carter had to face the reality of what that meant. "I've never been more sure," Nia said, her voice steady. She took a deep breath. This was the moment. The door to the executive suite opened, and William Hudson stepped into view. William Hudson was a tall, imposing figure, his sharp suit a testament to the wealth and power he had accumulated over the years. His face was cold, his eyes calculating as he looked at the two of them. But there was something different now, something in his posture that told Nia he knew why they were here. "So you've come to confront me," William said, his voice low and smooth, as though this were just another business transaction. "What do you expect to gain from this, Nia Justice?" Nia replied, her voice unwavering. "For the children you've exploited. For my mother who died trying to protect me from you." William's smile faltered for just a second, but it quickly returned, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You don't know the whole story, Nia. You've only been fed half-truths by people who want to tear down everything I've built." "I don't need to know your lies," Nia said, her words sharp. "I know the truth. I know what you did at Horizon Haven. You used children with special abilities for your own gain. You knew what was happening, and you let it continue because it served your interests. But that ends now." Carter stood beside Nia, his face grim. "This isn't just about you anymore, Father. This is about everyone you've hurt, the people you've destroyed for your empire." William's gaze flicked toward Carter, his expression hardening. "You're no different than the rest of them, Carter. You've been weak, allowing your emotions to cloud your judgment. You've made a choice now, one that you'll regret." Nia stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "You're the one who's weak, hiding behind your wealth and power. You're nothing but a coward who can't face the consequences of your actions." The tension in the room was palpable, but Nia refused to back down. She wasn't going to let him intimidate her anymore. This wasn't just about exposing the truth. It was about reclaiming her life, her future. Suddenly, Carter spoke, his voice low and resolute. "It's over, Father. The truth is out. You can't hide behind your money anymore. People know what you've done, and they'll make sure you pay for it. As William Hudson stood there, his face hardening with fury, Nia felt a surge of victory. This was it. The moment where everything changed. William's lips twisted into a sneer. You think you've won? This is just the beginning. You have no idea what you've unleashed. But Nia wasn't afraid. She wasn't going to let him control her any longer. The beginning of what she asked, her voice cold. The truth, Justice. Because I'm done running from you. With that, Carter stepped forward and handed over the file of evidence they had collected, the proof that would bring William's empire crashing down. The look on William's face was priceless as he realized that his carefully constructed world was falling apart.